So there's a ton that's going to happen in the next few weeks as we head into the beginning of the year. 180 different laws, I think, that are going to be going into effect starting January 1st. One really controversial one, of course, is the Safety Act's no cash bail provision that was approved way back in January of 2021. Governor signed it, and then there were several trailer bills to clean up some language, but ultimately they had to bring about more amendments that they passed last week, and the governor signing those on Tuesday without much of a ceremony. There's also a new General Assembly that's going to be seated here in Illinois starting January 11th, and with that could come a push to prohibit the sale of semi-automatic guns like pistols, shotguns, or rifles like AR-15s, and also prohibit the possession of magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. So obviously this is a pretty contentious issue and something that the governor supports and actually campaigned on. We're going to hear the governor talk about those two issues, signing the Safety Act with no cash bail that starts January 1st, and also what his take is on a bill that's been proposed at the State House to ban certain types of weapons, ban the possession of certain types of magazines, and also restrict anyone under the age of 21 from getting a FOID card in Illinois, and that's a firearm owner's identification card. So we've heard already from some of the opposition of that particular measure to prohibit the sale of guns, certain types of guns and magazines. For instance, Guns Save Life founder John Bach, we talked with him earlier this week. He discussed how he thinks that this is unconstitutional and it's going to be challenged not just by Guns Save Life, but you've also got the federal firearms licensees of Illinois that represent gun store owners across the state. They as well tell us that they're going to file a lawsuit if this thing is filed. The Illinois State Rifle Association as well promises a lawsuit. And I would imagine even like the NRA or the Second Amendment Foundation, national groups, they may come in and file their own lawsuits if this measure passes. But yesterday, Governor J.B. Pritzker was at an unrelated event, and he was asked about this, and in particular, what his take is, and does he think that it's going to pass constitutional muster? So the governor at an unrelated event being asked this question, reporter laying it out there for the governor to respond to about Bob Morgan's bill and whether it's constitutional. Here's some of what the governor had to say in response to those questions.
Do you think there will be any bipartisan support on this?
And if there's going to be any bipartisan support on this, or if it'll be partisan.
Well, I'm hopeful. I think there are Republicans in the suburbs, particularly, who should vote for this and whose constituents want this. As you know, I campaigned on this, getting an assault weapons ban passed, a high-capacity magazine ban passed, so it's very important to me. Whether it happens during the lame duck session, which I know is the expectation, or it happens during regular session is, it's important that we do it as fast as possible. There's no doubt. But I just want to be clear that our aim is to get it done in the first half of the year.
Do you have concerns about the
Asked if there's concerns about the constitutionality. He says nope.
No, now with the Bruin decision, you're an attorney.
Well, not a constitutional lawyer, but I will say that my expectation is that there will be lawsuits, because once it's passed, the people who oppose it, that's really all that's left for them, is to take it to court. They want to slow it down. They want to end it if they can, find a friendly judge if they can. But I believe that the proposal that's been made has been vetted. Bob Morgan is an attorney. And I believe that this is a constitutional proposal.
So the governor, again, being asked about this at an unrelated news conference yesterday about the legislation that Bob Morgan has proposed. And you're going to want to come back here a little bit later on this morning after 8 o'clock. We're going to be talking with State Representative Bob Morgan about his bill, why he thinks it's necessary, and get some of his response to the critics who say they're going to file a lawsuit saying it's unconstitutional. Surely they're going to try to go after a possible gun ban. But what about the issue of prohibiting individuals under the age of 21 from being able to access a constitutional right to keep and bear arms? So these are obviously some pretty contentious issues to debate. We'll hear more from the governor coming up. And also, I want to hear from you as well. If you want to chime in here at 217-629-7970, that's the phone number where you can have your voice be heard on these issues. Again, 217-629-7970. We'll hear more from the governor about guns, but also about the Safety Act. And also want to get your thoughts. Again, 217-629-7970. Let's go right to the phones. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you had heard anything about the fact that in Illinois, I think there's 67 counties that have passed gun sanctuary laws. How will they affect what Pritzker's wanting to do if it does pass?
And that's a great question. I asked Gun Save Life founder John Bach about that, and he said that a lot of this really is ceremonial. These gun sanctuary counties that I don't know the exact number of counties that have passed it, but it is quite a few counties, I do know. But essentially they had resolutions in front of their county voters saying if there's any kind of ban on semi-automatic weapons, then the county should not enforce that. While that's ceremonial, it really comes down to the discretion of local states' attorneys and if they're going to pursue those types of cases if that law is enacted, as the governor says he expects it to be within the first 6 months of 2023. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It does. I just didn't know. I had not heard how the gun sanctuary laws would affect it, and you did answer that, so thank you.
I appreciate that, and I'm actually going to ask Bob Morgan about that very issue as well and how that could impact the implementation of such a statewide prohibition on the sale of certain weapons and the possession of certain types of magazines, let alone an individual under the age of 21 being able to keep and bear arms, as is their Second Amendment right. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, good morning, Greg. Hey, as of right now, if you're under 21 and 18, you got to have a parent or guardian signature to purchase a firearm.
Yep.
If you have a void card.
Yep.
So, but yet, these 18-year-olds can sign up for the military and use a weapon in the military. And
that's one exemption I believe is in Morgan's bill, is if they're in the National Guard or if they're in the military, then they can be able to get a FOID card. But, they got to jump through some hurdles to prove that.
Yeah, but I really think this is not correct. If maybe they should just put if you're under 18, along with the parent or guardian's signature, maybe to be required to take a gun safety class.
Well, I think everybody should take a gun safety class, period, or brush up on their skills around firearm safety. And whether or not that's required, I think it's just the common sense thing to do. One last call here before the break, and then we'll come back and hear more of what the governor had to say about firearms, but also about why he didn't have a huge ceremony about signing the Safety Act and no cash bail. He did that quietly through a news release Tuesday evening. We'll hear why he did that and also more about guns. But real quick, a phone call. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, morning, Bishop.
Hey.
I hope the gentleman that you have on here a little bit, if he mentions the new buzzword weapons of war, be sure to remind him that, during the Revolution, muzzleloaders were weapons of war. And that to this day that American citizens can still own a cannon, and it's probably easier to own a cannon than it is an AR-15.
Well, and I'll definitely pose some questions, challenge State Representative Bob Morgan. That'll be coming up at 8 o'clock, so about 8:10 or so. Come back here. And we'll have State Representative Bob Morgan on here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. All right, back with your phone calls at 217-629-7970. That's the number to chime in live and local. We've been hearing Governor J.B. Pritzker being asked about gun legislation that State Representative Bob Morgan has proposed. And again, we'll be talking with Representative Morgan coming up after 8:10 this morning. But the governor was also asked about the Safety Act. One journalist up in the Chicago area asking a twofer, putting several questions into one, and that was, of course, about guns, but also about the Safety Act. And Governor J.B. Pritzker being asked about these issues yesterday at an unrelated news event. And keep in mind, Tuesday night, the governor signed the Safety Act without a ceremony. Typically, if the governor, signing a big important bill, he'll He'll have several lawmakers show up in an event, and they'll have a big signing ceremony. That did not happen Tuesday evening. Instead, he just announced the signing through a news release via email to members of the media. But the governor was asked about that, why he didn't have a big ceremony, but also asked about gun legislation. So here's the governor.
Okay, let's start with the Bob Morgan's proposal. There were a number of people that Bob Morgan consulted with, including folks in my office, as he put together the proposal, including people in the Senate. I know that the Senate president has been a champion, truly a champion of gun safety laws. And in fact, the very first thing that I signed as governor, you may recall, was his bill to license gun stores in Illinois. And so there's a lot that's gone into this. It isn't just that the sponsor has written something and thrown it in the hopper. So there's support for many aspects of this. Again, as you know, the legislative process can be a grinding one that requires a lengthier look at each piece of it. But I favor the legislation that he's put forward, and I'm hopeful that we can get it passed. You asked about the yeah. It is a big deal. It still is. Well, we wanted to get it signed fast as possible. That's honestly, I from the day that it passed, I called my staff and said, okay, we have to wait for the legislature to deliver the enrolled, as they say, legislation so that I can sign it into law. It sometimes takes them quite a while to do that. We needed it to be expedited. And so as fast as they were able to deliver it to me, I wanted to get it signed and out the door. So,
why is it so important?
Oh, it's very important because, as you know, again, I campaigned on clarifications that needed to be made to the Safety Act. Some of it were, things that I think everybody recognized. Let's make sure everybody, judges, state's attorneys, sheriffs, et cetera, understand these provisions. So maybe we need to write them in a way that's just much clearer and it has a little more detail to it. So I'm glad that we're able to get that done. And again, because January 1 is a date that is important in the Safety Act, every day before that we can get it signed and into law and considered, as the judges and state's attorneys effectuate it, is good for them.
So then the governor's asked how you judge the success of the ending cash bail in Illinois.
Well, I mean, we'll be looking to the Supreme Court. They obviously are monitoring this well for us. And talking to state's attorneys and, asking what the real challenges are that they're facing. But a lot of it has been addressed in this amendment to the law. And as with all laws, we're always going to be looking to see, what's working really well and what things, are maybe less so, and who it is that's coming forward and saying this is problematic. The most important thing is we're trying to make our neighborhoods and our communities safer all across the state of Illinois. This bill, this law, and these amendments are designed to do just that.
But states' attorneys across the states don't agree with that prospect. That's why there are around 60 states' attorneys and sheriffs across the state suing the governor and the legislature, trying to block implementation of the no cash bail provision of the Safety Act. And that case is going to be heard in Kankakee County December 20th. A circuit court judge expected to rule on that the week after, and it's fully anticipated that the Illinois Supreme Court's going to have to step in to make a decision on this, while they're also trying to inform local law enforcement and courts on how to implement no cash bail. So the next few weeks here are going to be interesting when it comes to the Safety Act and no cash bail, but also the next few months when it comes to gun legislation. The governor's sounding off on both of those, and we'll talk with Bob Morgan after 8 o'clock this morning. He's the sponsor of that proposed gun prohibition. So that's just some of what's coming up here on WMAY.